For this video, I'm continuing off of the load balancer, well, the standard load balancer one, and I'm just going to show multiple backend pools. So we already have the Windows pool with the two Windows VMs, so I'm creating a Linux virtual machine, and it's going to be same network group and everything. I'm adding HTTP 80 because I'm going to install Nginx. Nginx code, but let's use so now it's going to become installed with Nginx by using cloud in it, and so this is just I'll create it and I'll show that it's has an Nginx server by putting a public IP here after it's created. Alright, so I got the public IP, I put it here and it works. So now let's actually disassociate it. So networking, go to your network interface card, configurations, disassociate and create static because we want to add it to the load balancer. Alright, it's done. So now let's go to our load balancer. So it already has its backend pool, the two Windows ones. So let's create another one. It's called Linux pool, and we're going to add the Linux virtual machine to it, and it should be. So we're just showing. I'm just showing off multiple backend pools. Alright, it's done. So here you see our two pools. So we don't need to create another health probe because we already have it listed on port 80. But we do need to create a new load balancing rule because this one is looking at the Windows pool. So we'll call it Linux LB rule and the front end IP address. So watch, if you try to do port 80 and do the Linux pool and use the same health probe, it's not going to work because we're already using this service, this 80. So we're actually going to have to create a new IP address to use for this new pool. So let's go do front end add. Alright, so it's called Linux front IP, and you gotta create a new public IP because it can't use the one that the Windows pool is using, so it's called Linux public IP. Add it, and then we could go and add the new load balancing rule after this is done. Alright, so we got two IPs. Now let's add Linux rule. Create the Linux, choose the Linux front IP 80, choose the Linux pool, and health probe, same one as before, and it works. Alright, so if you wanted to see that one's working, you just go to front end IP, and we already saw this one's working for the IIS, but let's check this front end IP so we can see Nginx, and there it is. And let's add inbound that rule because we already have one for VM1 and VM2. Now let's add one for the Linux 3, just called Linux NAT, I don't know. And choose the Linux front end IP, custom service, and port 4002 because 4000, 4001 are occupied already for the other VMs. And choose Linux VM, choose IP custom, and we don't want 3389 because that's Windows for RDP, so we do 22 for secure shell. Cool, so it gets front end IP, and now let's secure shell into it, SSH. So I use PuTTY And so here's the IP address, the front end IB. And we don't want 22, we want 4002. So it knows that this is a virtual machine. And then you put in your info. And there, it's working. You can do whatever you want. Okay, I don't have anything. You could, yeah, so that's how you connect to it. So you know it works now. So that's how to create multiple backend pools.